Keith in North Bucks. Let's go with Keith. Go on, Keith.
Evening, chap. How you doing?
Very well indeed, thanks.
Compliments of the season yet again, old boy.
And to you, my friend.
George, I need a bit of assistance on this. As a simple bloke, as you've probably gathered from previous conversations, it strikes me that the Palestinians are protagonists, victims, but above all else, pawns. Pawns of the Arab world, where they're a flag of convenience, but not overly well supported by those in power, and also a flag of convenience as a terrorist mark for the West to attack. So we have a situation where we have Israel committing, frankly, unspeakable deeds, but also being victims of a response that's funded out of the Arab world. And it just strikes me that this is a never-ending cycle that's never ever going to end. And I'm intrigued to know where you feel a possible solution could lie. And my sympathies lie most of all not with the protagonists on either parties, be that Arab power brokers, Western power brokers, Israeli troops, or protagonists of Hamas, but the civilians that are sitting there watching bombs fall on their kids.
Well, Keith, I've told you before, there's nothing at all simple about you, and there's nothing at all simple about your analysis. But if you don't mind me saying so, you've got a number of things confused in that contribution. First of all, nobody's funding the Palestinians. Nobody at all. That's why, according to witnesses this evening from the United Nations, the people are starving. They're begging in the streets and eating off the garbage heaps. None of the Arab countries, including that Arab country, one of whose scions just paid over or opened his chequebook to the tune of £1 billion, £1,000 million to buy Manchester City at the bottom of the league. Can you imagine how many slices of bread £1,000 million would have bought for the Palestinian refugees? Secondly, there are no Arab power brokers because there's no Arab power. The Arabs are led by pygmies of such a miserable, pathetic stripe that it's almost a liberty to give them another kicking. But I will. The Arab leaders are not leaders as you or I would recognize them. They are puppets. They are corrupt puppets whose deal with the West is you give us the weapons, the military know-how, the diplomatic and political support. We'll give you, if we're an oil producer, the benefit of our petrodollars. We'll invest them in your stock market. We'll spend them in your arms bazaars, even though we can't even work the machinery we buy from you. We'll gamble them in your casinos. We'll spend them on your hookers. We'll invest them in the property market in your country, and all we ask in return is that you keep us in power. They ain't no power brokers, my dear friend Keith, because there is no Arab power. That may change, of course, and if Hosni Mubarak's arrest of military officers this evening is because some patriotic officers are about to step forward in Cairo, well, let's hope so, at least from my point of view. That would be an unintended consequence of this aggression in Palestine, wouldn't it? Now, the third area that you've got wrong is this. The Palestinians have a choice of dying quietly of hunger and disease on their knees, or deciding to die noisily on their feet. It's an age-old dilemma. And it was faced most comparably by the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto, who were locked up in a ghetto by the Nazi occupiers of Poland and were systematically starved to death. Disease like typhus and typhoid and all sorts of other diseases began to cut them down in large numbers inside the ghetto. And the Jews decided, in the words which were so poetic that they actually became a very popular Jewish song of the resistance. They said, we can choose to die or live forever. And they meant by living forever that their reputations, their glorious uprising in 1943 would resound through the ages in history, as indeed it has. This is a direct comparison with what's happened in Gaza, except the Gaza ghetto contains even more people. In the Gaza ghetto, which is locked up on both sides by the tyrant Mubarak under orders from elsewhere, and by Israel in the other gate, is 1.5 million people who could choose to die quietly of hunger and disease or stand up and fight, even though their fight, by definition, will be ineffectual because they have no weapons. You see, what do you say about an air force that's bombing people who have no anti-aircraft defences or aircraft of their own? What do you say about a big, brave navy that's bombarding people in a ghetto from the sea when they have no shore defence? Of course, their resistance is ineffectual, just as ineffectual as the uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto in 1943 was ineffectual. But when the Jews decided to use their own bodies as weapons against the occupier and the people who'd locked them in their ghetto, they did indeed live forever.